I noticed him for the first time on a quiet Sunday afternoon, sitting alone in my apartment with a box of old photographs spread across the floor. I wasn't looking for anything strange. I just wanted to remember. But when I reached a photo from my 7th birthday, something felt wrong. There he was, standing behind me, one hand resting lightly on my shoulder. I didn't remember him. I was sure I never had. And yet somehow he was there again in the next photo. And the one after that. At first, I told myself I was tired. Memory plays tricks when you stare too long at the past. But the longer I looked, the harder it became to ignore the pattern: school events, family trips, a hospital corridor after my mother's surgery. The same man appeared in all of them, always close, never centered, never acknowledged by anyone else. And here was the part that unsettled me the most. No one had ever mentioned him. Not once. My life until that moment had been ordinary in a way I trusted. I worked as a freelance editor, lived alone, and spoke to my parents every Sunday. I believed my past was stable, even if it wasn't perfect. I valued honesty because it made the world feel solid. You could step on it without falling through. That belief mattered to me because I had built my identity around it. I trusted what I was told. I trusted what I remembered. I trusted the people closest to me. That trust began to crack the more I studied those photos. The man didn't look threatening. He wore simple clothes, neutral colors. His face was clear but unremarkable, as if designed not to stand out. In some pictures he was smiling slightly. In others, he looked serious, almost watchful. What frightened me wasn't how he looked. It was how naturally he fit into moments that defined my life. I called my mother that night. I asked her about my 7th birthday party. She laughed and said she barely remembered it. I mentioned the photos. Then I asked, carefully, if she recognized the man standing behind me. There was a pause, too long to be normal. She said she couldn't see him clearly and changed the subject. When I pressed, she told me I was overthinking things and suggested I get some rest. Her voice stayed calm, but something in it felt controlled, as if she were choosing each word with care. That was the moment I understood I was no longer in control of the story I thought was mine. Over the next few days, I asked other people. My father brushed it off, and Anne said she didn't remember. A childhood friend looked uncomfortable and told me some things were better left alone. No one denied the man existed. They just refused to explain him. Their silence felt coordinated. It wasn't forgetfulness. It was avoidance. I started feeling isolated in a way I never had before. Every conversation left me with more questions and fewer places to put them. I replayed old memories, trying to insert him into them, but my mind resisted. It was as if part of my life had been edited without my consent. As I dug deeper, I noticed smaller details I had once ignored. Times when I had been discouraged from asking questions. Decisions made on my behalf without explanation. Moments when adults had exchanged looks over my head, then smiled at me as if nothing had happened. What I once thought was protection now felt like control. I struggled with myself during that period. Part of me wanted to stop. Life had been easier when I didn't know. Another part couldn't accept that my identity rested on half-truths. If someone had shaped my past without my knowledge, then who had I really been becoming all these years? The turning point came when I found a photo I had never seen before. It was tucked inside an old envelope at my parents' house, hidden behind tax documents. The man was there again, but this time he wasn't in the background. He was holding my hand. I looked about 5 years old. On the back of the photo, written in my mother's handwriting, were 4 words, "For emergencies only." That night, I confronted her in person. She didn't cry. She didn't deny anything. She sat down and told me the truth in a voice that sounded tired, not guilty. The man's name was Daniel. He wasn't a relative or a family friend. He was assigned to me. When I was born, there had been a legal dispute over my custody involving people my parents believed could harm me. Daniel worked in private security. His role was simple: observe, document, and intervene only if necessary. He followed quietly. He stayed out of conversations. He never allowed himself to become visible. The photos were accidental. He was never meant to be remembered. What unsettled me most wasn't the explanation. It was the logic behind it. My parents believed they were protecting me, but in doing so, they had decided I didn't deserve the truth. They chose control over honesty, safety over trust. I asked why no one ever told me. My mother said, "Because once you know someone is watching, you never feel free again." She wasn't wrong. Even hearing it, I felt something close around my chest. The freedom built on lies had already cost me something. It had cost me ownership of my own story. I asked what happened to Daniel. She said his job ended when a threat passed. Years ago. He disappeared from my life without a goodbye because he had never been meant to exist in it. I spent weeks after that weighing my next move. I could let it rest, pretend the truth changed nothing, or I could reclaim control by facing it fully. I chose the second path, knowing it would come with consequences. Through old records and a quiet search, I found Daniel. He was older, thinner, still careful with his words. He confirmed everything my mother had said. He told me he had broken protocol more than once by caring. He stayed in the photos because part of him wanted proof that I grew up safe. Meeting him didn't bring comfort, it brought clarity. My life had been guided, not lived freely. But it had also been protected in ways I never understood. The final choice was mine. I could resent the past and let it define me, or I could acknowledge it and move forward with intention. I chose to forgive without forgetting. I chose truth, even when it felt heavy. Some things were gained. I learned the strength of asking hard questions. I learned that loyalty can exist alongside control, but it comes at a price. What was lost was simpler and more painful. The innocence of believing my life had unfolded naturally. What can never return is the version of me who trusted without hesitation. Today, when I look at those photos, I no longer feel washed. I feel informed. The man in the background no longer owns my past. I do. There is a quiet difference between being protected and being controlled, and you only notice it once the silence breaks. Thank you for listening to my story. If it made you reflect on your own memories, I invite you to share your thoughts. Stories grow stronger when they are carried together. And if you want to hear more honest, thoughtful stories like this, I'd be glad to have you back next time.